Welcome to the world of mathematics. As some of you know, I'm a math teacher. When I was in college, I had to study the biographies of many famous mathematicians. And I found, much to my surprise, that many of them, in the books that I read, had a commitment to our Lord Christ. Most of them believed in God. And we find that even before the time of Christ, the ancient Greeks all acknowledged the existence of God. We have this quote from Plato, God ever geometrizes. And one of my favorites, that maybe you've seen at the end of the Donald Duck in Mathmagic Land, mathematics is the alphabet to which God has written the universe. I can't go into the biographies of all the famous mathematicians, but today I'd like to share with you my two favorite, Sir Isaac Newton and Blaise Pascal. They both lived in the 1600s, so I'd like you to use your imagination and pretend that you're entering back into the 1600s with me. So when you hear the music start, then you'll be pretending that you're in the 1600s. See you in a minute. Come in here and sit down. Got to keep the baby warm. I thought you were the people going to go get the medicine for him. I don't think he can make it through the night. Poor little thing. His mother's sick. Somebody was there when he was born said his little body could fit into that quart nut. I don't think he'll make it through the night, do you? Even if he does make it through the night, what kind of life can he have? His father's dead. And only his mother and his grandmother live here on the farm. How can two women take care of the farm? I hope they hurry with the medicine. They decided to call him Isaac after his dead father. Poor boy. What will become of him? I better put him here closer to the fire so he keeps warm. I don't think he'll make it through the night. This is the way Isaac Newton came into the world. His father was dead, and his mother and his grandmother lived alone at the farm. No one even thought that he would make it through childhood. Hannah Newton, his mother, just tried to run the farm. A woman with a plow just couldn't keep things together. The house was falling apart. She just couldn't manage the farm by herself. When Newton was 3 years old, Hannah got a strange visitor. She was told that a minister in another village had asked if she would want to marry him. Hannah didn't know what to do. She hadn't even met the man. She said, I don't know whether that would be a good idea or not. I think I'll ask my brother. She consulted with her brother, and her brother looked into the situation and found out that the man was a good man of good reputation, but he was quite a bit older than Hannah. He was in his 60s. Her brother came and advised her to go ahead and marry him because he didn't know any other way that Hannah could manage taking care of little Isaac. He also reported that the man, his name was Barnabas Smith, had one condition upon the marriage. He said he was old and set in his ways, and he wasn't used to children. If she married him, she would have to come and live in the manse, and Isaac would have to stay on the farm with his grandmother. He promised to provide all that was needed for the family for them to survive, but he was not to come and live with his mother. This is one of the hardest things, I think, in young Isaac's life, was that at age 3, he had to see his mother go away and marry Mr. Smith. He and his grandmother were alone on the farm. His mother was good about visiting him. Isaac would watch out the window, watching for his mother, and she would visit him once a week. The place where his mother lived was not too far away, and if she climbed to the top of the spire of the church, she could see the farm off in the distance. So little Isaac would look out and see the top of the church, and he knew where his mother was. In his heart, he began to be angry with Mr. Smith. But even at such a young child, he found it in his heart to forgive him and to find peace with Mr. Smith. When they were alone in the farm, his grandmother read to him from the Bible. And young Isaac became familiar with all the stories in the Bible, and he also became friends with Christ. He was one of his constant companions. But living such a lonely and solitary life gave Isaac a gift that he couldn't have gotten if he had gone to the busy manse. His only company was the world in which he lived, and he became interested in everything. He drew, he picked flowers and dried them. He looked at everything in nature and tried to understand how everything worked. So in one way, what would seem very sad that he was left alone on the farm became a blessing because it stimulated his mind, and Isaac turned from bitterness in his heart towards his stepfather and learned forgiveness at a very young age. When Isaac was 4, he was looking for his mother to come, and she didn't come. There was no telephone in those days, so she couldn't call to say she couldn't come. We kept thinking, she's got to come today, and she's got to come, or she's got to come the next day. But she didn't come, and she didn't come. Isaac then was sent a message. His mother had another baby. He now had a little sister whose name was Mary. Now you'd think that by this time that Barnabas would want Isaac to come and live with him. He already had one child, once 2 children when he already had one. But Mr. Smith did not encourage Isaac to come and live with him. He still stayed at the farm. But he was getting older now, and he could walk the short distance to visit his mother when he wanted to. Instead of being jealous of his little sister who got to live with his mother, he also found peace in his heart for that. And he spent his time making little toys for his sister. Now, I don't have any of the actual toys that Isaac used, but I do have a collection of handmade toys. And I think that probably some of his toys were like this. We do know that he liked to make toys that worked. This little spinning wheel, the wheel goes around, but if Isaac had made a spinning wheel, he would have made it so that it actually could spin the yarn. He made toys for his little sister and took them to her, and she was delighted with all his presents. He was interested in making things with his hands. In the village where he lived, they were building a windmill. And Isaac would go down and watch the workmen every day, and every night he would come home, and he would complete on a little toy model the same progress that was done in the real windmill. Now, I have just this little cardboard windmill, but it said that Isaac's was carved out of wood, and plank for plank he made it to scale to what was done in the village. Now, this windmill, the little blades turn around, but Isaac's, on the inside, the gears turned, and it could actually grind flour. It was so meticulously done. Isaac learned to use his hands, had such skill in them, that he started them at such a young age. As Isaac got older, he was always small for his age, soon decided that maybe he needed to go to school. Well, there was no school in his village. The closest one was too far for him to walk on a daily basis, so the family thought, what should they do? And Barnabas and Hannah discussed it, and they said the best thing for him to do is to live in the village where the school is located. So they looked for a family who could take him in. They found one. It was the druggist, the apothecary. His name was Mr. Clark. Isaac was given the attic room way up top of their home. The drugstore or the apothecary shop was there, and the family lived there, and Isaac was given the attic. And when he saw how big it was, he was so happy because he could have a workshop up there, and it wasn't like a finished room or anything, and he could do what he liked with his experiments. The Clarks had a young daughter. This time Isaac was 11, and their daughter was 9. Her name was Catherine. And you can imagine that 9-year-olds, somebody's going to come and live at your house. Catherine was interested in everything that Isaac had as he unpacked and was there watching. And she saw the windmill, and she said, "Does it work?" And Isaac was a little bit offended. He said, "All my models work." Catherine had never seen anything quite like that. But she and Isaac actually put the model to the test. Isaac held the model out the window, and they could see that the blades turned freely. They didn't want to put the model to a test outside, so Isaac rigged up a little belt and treadmill, and they found a mouse up in the attic, and they had a mouse-powered wheels that turned, and they actually ground the flour. Well, when Catherine saw that this boy could make such wonderful things, she said, "I have some toys, but most of them are broken." Isaac went in and fixed all of Catherine's toys. He became a great friend of hers. You can imagine somebody able to come into your house and fix toys. Isaac looked at the library of the Clarks and was eager to read all of the apothecary's books and just absorb all the knowledge of that family. When he was unpacking, he was also so drawn to Catherine, he thought he could share his inmost thoughts with her. At that time, he had already written a poem. I've got a copy of that poem here he read to Catherine. It's a beautiful poem, and it's hard for me to believe that someone as a child, like 11 years old, could write a poem like this.
A secret art my soul requires to try, if prayers can give me what the wars deny. 3 crowns distinguished here in order do present their objects to my knowing view. Earth's crown thus at my feet I can disdain, which heavy is, and at the best but vain. But now a crown of thorns I gladly greet. Sharp is this crown, but not so sharp as sweet. The crown of glory that I yonder see is full of bliss and of eternity.
It's an amazing poem to me that a young child would write about it. The theme of this poem is 3 crowns. I have this one, an earthly crown. It's when men give you praise and honor. And Newton said men's earthly crown he didn't care about. The second crown was a crown of thorns. It reminds us of our Lord Jesus. He said, "Sharp is that thorn, but not so sharp as sweet." Even as a young child, he was willing to take the pain of following Christ because of the sweetness of it. The third crown was one that he could see afar off. The third crown of heaven, far off, and that he would look forward to at the end of his life. These are pretty profound thoughts for such a young child. It was no surprise then when he started school that he was best in Bible of anybody in his class. He did so well. He didn't do very well in math or English or any of those other subjects. When he first arrived at the schoolhouse, he noticed that there was a patch of light on the wall. In his mind, he began thinking, I wonder if I could use that patch of light to tell time with, to see how the day is going on. The teacher was having him just do simple sums. When his mother asked him about arithmetic, he said, arithmetic, I don't have any trouble with that. When I do my models, I have to do a lot more arithmetic than they ask me to do. He was sort of bored with the normal subjects. He was eager to get home at night and read the books in the apothecary shop and learn all about all the things, the wonderful titles that grown-ups were reading in those days. Well, this went on for some time. He was just doing well in Bible. And till one time, he got beaten up by a bully. Now, every class has a bully, and Isaac's class was no exception. And the bully grabbed a hold of Isaac, who was just a little boy, and he kicked him in the stomach one day. And the next day, Isaac thought, I don't want that to happen again, so he had a plan. He decided that he used his advantage, the one advantage he had over the bully, was that he could run fast, and he was small, and he could get out of his way. So when the bully said, I'm going to get you again, he darted back and forth, frustrating the bully who wanted to grab a hold of him, and he wouldn't let himself be caught, and he just darted back and forth until the bully was exhausted with trying to catch him. And then he went up and grabbed him by the shoulders and said, you leave me alone. Now the bully, besides challenging to fight him, said, why don't you fight me, you dumb ox? When he got home to the Clark's house, Isaac said to Catherine, "Do you think I'm a dumb ox?" And she said, "I don't think you're dumb, but your grades aren't very good." Well, Isaac took this as a challenge. From then on, he determined that no matter how boring or how simple the schoolwork seemed, he was going to do it properly. So he quickly started to be the best in every subject in his class. After he finished that school with the Clarks, he went back home to the farm. By this time, Barnabas had died and his mother was back at the farm with the other children, and she was wanting Isaac to run the farm for her. Well, Isaac wasn't very good as a farmer. He'd be out trying to check on the animals, and instead of watching for the little lamb or cow that would go astray, he'd be calculating the size of the field or some other problem. One time during a really violent storm, Hannah asked Isaac to go to the barn and check on the animals who might be frightened. And he went, and he didn't come back, and he didn't come back, and he didn't come back. And you can imagine Hannah started getting worried, so she went out. And there was Isaac, out in the middle of the storm. He had a board down on the ground, and she watched him. He'd go up to the board, then he'd wait for a gust of wind, and he'd jump into the wind, and it would blow him back, and he'd put a mark on the floor, on the ground, and she watched him do this over and over again. And she said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out if I can judge the force of the wind by how far it blows me." Well, Hannah realized that her son was interested in more knowledge, and when he wasn't too good at selling the farm crops, he'd go for market day, and he would sell things as fast as possible and then run over to the Clarks to read another book. The hired hand that went with him said, "Mrs. Smith, don't send Isaac to market. Let me do it. He just wants to do it as fast as possible. He doesn't care whether he gets the best price." Well, Hannah then decided that maybe Isaac needed to go to more schooling. So he was sent to Cambridge University. And he would have worn a robe all the time as a student. He started there at Cambridge when he was 18, I believe. While he was there, he had a roommate who was interested in just partying, wanted to play cards and have friends in at night and just socialize. Isaac was really frustrated because he wanted to have his room for research. And he went for a walk in the garden, and lo and behold, there was another student there by the name of John Wickens. And and Isaac started talking. He said, "How come you're out for a walk so late at night?" He said, "Oh, I've got this roommate. All he wants to do is play cards and have his friends in." So he said, "I've got the same problem." So they decided that they'd switch roommates. Well, Isaac and John Wickens were friends for life. They were kindred spirits, and they both enjoyed learning, whereas many of the other students there at Cambridge were not that interested in learning. Isaac enjoyed his time at Cambridge, and he had very good teachers. And then came the bubonic plague. It was carried by the fleas that were on rats. And nobody knew about the exact cause of it, but they did know that where there are a lot of people living together, the plague was spreading. So they closed Cambridge University for an entire year and told all the students to go home because they thought it was too dangerous for them to live together. So Isaac went home to his mother's farm. This was a very important year of his life. He set up a little work table out in the garden and would go out there to study. He loved being outdoors. And while he was out there, the story goes that he saw an apple falling in the orchard. And the moon was out at the same time, and he started to think, I wonder if the moon is drawn to the earth like the apple is, and why doesn't it fall on the earth? Well, his thoughts led him to discover the laws of gravity. That alone would have made him famous. But he was not done with that year. He also, because of the mathematics that he was doing, invented what we call today the calculus. He worked also on the binomial theorem. All three things, the planetary motion, the calculus, and the binomial theorem, any one of those would have made him famous. But he invented all of these just because the bubonic plague closed Cambridge University. When he went back to school, he shared his ideas with his professor, who said, "You better start writing this stuff down, because you're thinking about things that nobody else does." And Isaac obeyed, and the works that he put down eventually were collected in a book called Principia, which he wrote in Latin. He wrote another book as well later on called Optics, in which he explored the properties of light, did experiments with light, with a double prism. He was the one to show that light was composed of many colors, not that people before him believed that the prism made the colors that showed when you shine light through the prism. But he showed that light itself was composed of varying bands of color. I wanted to say I have this little space shuttle here, but when the Apollo Moon Project went on, it said that the news people were asking, who's flying the moon mission today? And the astronauts all answered Isaac Newton, because it was his laws that kept the spaceship in flight. It was Newton's theories of gravity which taught the mathematics for the whole moon project to take place. When he graduated from Cambridge University, Dr. Barrow, his math teacher, decided that he would resign. This is an amazing story that Dr. Barrow said, "I've got this student, he's actually better than I am." So when Isaac graduated, Dr. Barrow said, "I give up my chair, you need to put Isaac Newton in it, he knows much more mathematics than I do." So Isaac became a teacher at Cambridge University. Throughout his life, he made friends with a lot of other famous people. Christopher Wren, who rebuilt London after the Great Fire of London. He was friends with Halley, and actually he's the one that told Halley of Halley's Comet that comets were not an accident of nature, but were actually came in on regular orbits, and because of Newton's encouragement, Halley did a study and identified Halley's Comet. I want to say that Newton was always interested in comets. When he was a little boy living in the Clark's house, he had been thinking about comets then, and he said, "Oh boy, I wish I could see a comet." And he and Catherine actually performed a great experiment. He took a little lantern and he put it made a paper lantern and tied it to a kite and flew the kite across the night sky, and so that he could see what a comet would look like. Well, the people in the village saw the comet, and many people thought it was a real comet. I think that Newton invented the first UFO. He had a lot of fun uncovering God's secrets. Now, he became a famous mathematician, and when he died, he was buried in Westminster Abbey. Remember that poem that he had when he was a little boy? He said he didn't care about the crown of men. But when he died, he was buried in a tomb that was designed for a king. If you go to England and go to Westminster Abbey, you can see the tomb of Isaac Newton. He was the first man ever to be knighted for his intellectual pursuits. Up till that time, people who were knighted for bravery in battle. But we call him Sir Isaac Newton because he was knighted by Queen Anne for his discoveries of truth. And there's a place where his memorial and his tomb is located in this. I think you can see it here. It's on the left. There's his tomb right in the hallway of Westminster Abbey. At his tomb, there's the inscription, "Rejoice at so great an ornament to the human race." Alexander Pope, a famous poet, said, "Nature and nature's law lay hidden in the nights, and God said, 'Let Newton be,' and all was light." We have some quotes of Isaac Newton that I'd like you to see. The crown he disdained. Jesus said that if you save your life, you'll lose it, and if you lose your life, you'll find it. He let go of the crown of men, and God gave him great honor. I think that that's something that Newton would have been surprised at, that he was given the crown of men. I think because he clung to the crown of Christ and held it as more important than anything else in his life. You might want to look at some of these quotes of Isaac Newton.